Hey guys, it's Tim here with the Mark II Golf channel, and today we're going to talk about this white Mark II Golf. Yes, so we're back in the old barn right now as we've just been doing some last clearing out. So that's why we've been gone a little while, is because this barn is massive. Look at the size of it, and it's been full of cars and parts and all sorts. So we've had to spend our time doing this, and it really didn't make for great content. So guys, look, to apologise, to make up for it, to bring you some amazing Mark II stories, I went and bought this the other day. This is a 1984 Mark II Golf that was used for the Mark II Golf press launch back in London. It was one of the cars handed out to journalists to test when they very first launched the cars. So this is a 1984 1.3 Mark II Golf, and his name's Jeffrey. So guys, let me introduce you to Jeffrey. Now, as we walk back into the old barn, you can see there's the tow truck. I recently bought this, but sadly couldn't use it to go and collect Jeffrey because, well, it was another one of my bad financial decisions. So I bought this truck, and no sooner than I got it, probably 20 miles later, the engine's launched itself. So that truck now needs a new engine, so I'm sending that off to get it done in the next couple of weeks, so at least I can tow my race car and other things about. So I had to go and pay to get this car collected. Now, if we look at what we've got here, don't worry guys, that 2.8 24 valve engine is going nowhere near this. So before anyone screams in the comments, Tim, what you're doing, I am not putting that engine in this car. So don't worry, this car is going to stay absolutely standard as Volkswagen intended. So guys, this is Jeffrey. This is Jeffrey, the 1.3C Mark II Golf that was originally used as a press car when they launched the Mark II in 1984. So this was registered to Volkswagen really super early in January 1984, ahead of the press launch in London. So this particular car was then given out to a journalist for a long-term test. So the journalist would have kept it for 3-4 months and really got to grips with it. I mean, if you've seen any sort of motoring magazines or anything sort of like that, you would have seen that sometimes they have a long-term test car. So back in the day, this was one of them. Now, when I put this on Facebook, when I went to go and collect the car, the question was asked, how do I know it's a press car? You know, how do I know that it says Volkswagen on the logbook, but was it just in fact registered to Volkswagen? Was it a company car? Did they use it as a runaround? Well, it's an interesting story about how I came by this particular car. So I got a message through the Mark II Golf Owners Club Facebook page saying that this car was available and would I be interested in buying it. So I thought, I don't really need a white 5-door 1.3, but tell me about the car. What's good about it? Now, it turned out that this was owned by Volkswagen, and then it was bought 4 months later by a motoring journalist from the Midlands who's owned it ever since. So instantly I was interested. So we've got a nice early Mark II that was used by Volkswagen at the press launch for this car, and it's had the same owner ever since. So this car was actually not bought by the journalist who tested it, but a friend of his who worked with him, who needed to buy a car at the time. So they asked Volkswagen if his friend could buy the car, and of course Volkswagen said yes. So this car then got bought, and it was kept and loved and owned by the same people since then. So I bought this car off a lovely couple, Edward and Jennifer, who have owned this since they bought it from Volkswagen. They absolutely love this car, but it's one of those, and it happens so often, is that time just gets away from you. When you think about it, you've probably all got a project that's sat there and you thought, I'll get around to it, and you just don't. And of course, time gets away from you, other things take priority, and before you know it, many years have passed and you're no further along. And sadly, this is what's happened to Jeffrey. So what happened is the heater matrix went on this car, it got parked up, and it was one of those, we'll get around to it, and you know what, it never did. So this car has been sat in the same spot, on the same driveway, since that happened, and that was at least 11 years ago, looking at the MOT history. Now this happens all the time, and there's Facebook pages dedicated to cars that are sat on driveways not doing anything. And even the week that I was due to go and pick this car up, they'd had a letter through the door saying, if you're interested in selling that white Golf, please give us a call. So someone out there might recognize this car. They might have tried to buy it. To be honest, from what I was told, there's probably at least one person every couple of months puts a note through the door, knocks on the door looking to buy this car. So we've all seen Mark IIs out there like that just haven't moved. Thankfully, the owners of this car wanted it to go to an enthusiast. They wanted it to go to someone who would get it back on the road. So they didn't just want to put it up for sale on eBay or Facebook, because it could have just ended up as an abandoned project. Now, for those guys who are sitting there thinking, but Tim, what about your white barn find Mark II Golf GTI? Be quiet, it will get done. Yes, it will get done this year, I promise. It's been an awful year, as you know. So guys, look, we're here inside this car, and it's like a little time capsule. So as we look around it, so we've got the nice base spec steering wheel. As we look in here, again, I've only ever seen this before on my A-plate Jetta Coupe. We've got a second hand on the clock. Now that clock isn't working at the moment for some reason, so I need to investigate that, but that's just something else to go on the list. As we can see, it's got 65,000 miles, and the MOT history backs that up. Now, as we look here, the only option it does have is it's got the fader switch. So that's kind of cool. We've got a replacement stereo in here. Now, this isn't the original one that would have come with the car. But I actually have that. I was given that with the car. It's in a box in the boot. So I'll be putting that back to standard, I can imagine. Now, as we look down here, we've got, again, the base spec center console. So we've got the ashtray with no cigarette lighter. We've got just the cover here where you'd normally have that center console. And we've got a 4-speed gearbox. So not even 4+ overdrive. It is literally a 4-speed box. Now, as we look here, we've got some rubber car mats that look like universal ones that have been cut to fit, and the carpets have been out at some point. You can see that side trim isn't on, and it's not tucked in there. But otherwise, it's a black dash but with a blue interior. So as we look around here, again, it's just a nice, standard, clean, basic interior. It's got a blue parcel shelf. No holes for 6x9s cut into it. It's got these really skinny stalks that you see on the really, really early cars. Sort of the same stalks as the Mark I, I think. Someone will know. Now, somehow it's got a crack in the mirror there, which is unfortunate. It just needs a bit of a clean. So there's a bit of mould on the sun visor, but nothing much. So what we've got here is a really early, really untouched Mark II. It's completely standard, and you don't often see that anymore. Now, when I bought this car, I had to go up to Birmingham to go and collect it. So the plan was to take that tow truck, but as I said, it had other ideas. So I guess you could say, thankfully, it happened 2 miles down the road from here, opposed to 100 miles up the road with a Mark II Golf on the back of it, because to be honest, that would probably be a difficult one to explain to the AA. So anyway, it's here, it's in the workshop, and I guess we need to have a good look around it and see what we're going to do. So this is a car that really deserves a second chance after 11 years of being sat on a driveway. It's not because it wasn't loved, it's just because life goes on, and sadly, there's a lot of cars out there that this happens to. And so I think for us, what we want to do is really do a sympathetic restoration on this. I think first and foremost, we're going to have a look, see exactly what it needs. But my kind of thoughts on this are, we're going to need to replace the suspension components because they're all rusty and all the bushes are perished and dry. We're going to need to do the brakes, front and rear. We're possibly going to need to do the brake lines as well, because it's been sat on a concrete drive. It's probably not that great underneath. So I've had a look while it was on the truck, and it is actually pretty solid. It's just really crusty, and I think it's like some underseal or some paint has flaked away underneath, but it's actually really good. So so we may need to do the brake lines, the hard lines. We might have to replace those. The tires, they're cracked and perished, so they're going to need replacing. I mean, frankly, you wouldn't want to drive on 11-year-old tyres. So as I drive home from the workshop, I feel really good about this one. Now, it could just be because the sun's out and the pubs are open, but no, I've not been to the pub. Instead, I have been in the workshop with Jeffrey the Golf. Now, it's a really honest little Mark II, and it's got a great story behind it. I've bought it from a motoring journalist who, him and his wife have owned it for the last 37 years since they bought it directly from Volkswagen. So I think it's got a great story. It's got 65,000 miles. It's got a load of history with it. I think it's one of those that this is a car that really does need to be saved and not messed about with. We're going to put it back to standard and really just appreciate it for what it is. It's a great little Golf. So with that in mind, I think the next few videos that we upload are going to be about Jeffrey the Golf. So guys, please remember to subscribe to the channel and press the dingy bell to be notified of the next installment of Jeffrey the Golf that we upload. If you did like the story about our little Volkswagen press car that we've bought, please like this video. And guys, look, thank you ever so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.